All right, so we are finally ready for our comprehensive review of the Surface Pro 8. This is part one in that series, and we have the Surface Pro 8 here on my desk. I have it connected to the dock. This is the dock 2. It also works with the old dock 1. This is important because if you are coming from a previous Surface device, you'll know that this does work, even though they included Thunderbolt now. If you already have a dock, the dock works just fine with 4K and 1080p monitors and TVs. On the screen right now, I have Cinebench running, and I did one run for multi-score, and I got 4400, which is faster than the Surface Pro 7 Plus and the Surface Pro 7. The device is a little bit heavier though, and I do have a UAG case on it because this is how I usually use my devices, like this. It's a nice case. It does take away from the design of it though. So if you're not into that thing and you like using it naked, then obviously you wouldn't want to use a case like this. But I do this because sometimes, or most of the times, I resell my devices, so I don't want any scratches on it. So it does make it ergonomic still. If you push on the screen, it bounces back. You could draw on it, and it's a good experience. Now, the other new thing we have here is the Surface Slim Pen 2, which I have right here on my Surface laptop. Very responsive. It does give you that haptic feedback, and the drawing experience is a lot better. Some people are saying it's because of the processor in the screen, which is the case, but there's a fine tip now as well, which helps. So you have a fine tip on the pen, which makes it a lot smoother. The cursor and the pen meet exactly where they should, whereas on the old pen, that was not the case all the time on the old pen. So let me move this over here so I could move this further onto my desk so you could see it. Compared to the Surface Laptop Studio, this is the size difference here. So I'll bring the Surface Laptop Studio here. It's hard to tell on the screen exactly how much bigger this is, but this feels like double the weight without the keyboard. With the keyboard, it would be about 70% of the weight. Obviously, with the Surface Laptop Studio, you're getting a whole keyboard and a graphics processor, which is why this will probably be my main device. But for those people that don't need video editing and machine learning, running multiple virtual machines at the same time, the Surface Pro 8 may be better. But for those that do a lot of typing, even though I don't have the keyboard yet, I have two of the older keyboards. They're pretty much the same, except the new one has more carbon fiber in it. I would love to type on this before I would type on the Surface Pro 8. And then the next thing we had is we did a drawing test. My daughter did a drawing test on the Surface Pro 8. What she liked about it was that the screen didn't freeze up as much in Sketchbook Pro. It does still get hot a little bit, not quite as hot as the Surface Pro 7 or the Surface Pro 7 Plus, because the i5 in the Surface Pro 7 didn't have a fan, and neither did the one in the Surface Pro 7 Plus, I believe. So it doesn't have a fan, so then the screen gets hotter. But this is after drawing for hours. So she would draw on this device for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours sometimes. So with light drawing, you're not going to run into that issue. But the Surface Pro 8 is cooler. It is more responsive. The pen is more responsive. That finer tip is it's just as fine as the Apple Pencil tip we have. So we like to draw on it just as much as we do the Apple Pencil now. Very responsive because of the 120 hertz display. And the thing I love about Windows that's different than Mac OS is that you have one operating system where I could, draw in PowerPoint all on one screen, and then if I want to switch over, I could then open up Whiteboard, and I don't have the mobile system. But again, it's good. And then the pen thickness, when you push down for the pressure, is a lot better. You do get that haptic feedback. The lines, let's see. I'm not doing a real test here, just seeing how straight the lines would be diagonally. The diagonal lines are better. They're still not perfect. That's how they look. Let's see. Here we go. But yeah, the responsiveness is way better. So now it's just more fun to draw on this device than it was on the older device, the Surface Pro Plus and the Surface Pro 7. But it's not 100% perfect. If I compare it to the Wacom Cintiq that I have down here as well, what makes this so good is the portability, because as you can see, I could hold it in my hand and I could start drawing things. Whereas, maybe on the Wacom, obviously I can't carry it around with me. And the Surface laptop is good, but it's heavier. So I would say that is more for heavy duty work, video editing, and light drawing. But the one thing in comparison to the Surface Pro, the Surface Laptop Studio screen, when you're drawing and it's laid flat, it does feel a little bit better. So for example, if I move the Surface Laptop here, and then I do this, and I lay it flat, it's a little bit bigger, and it's cooler. It feels a little bit more responsive, just a little bit. This is good too, but the screen is still hot a little bit. You still feel that heat, whereas this is a little bit cooler. They both use the reversible tip for the eraser, or the fake eraser, whatever you want to call it. But this feels good. But again, if you're drawing on the Surface Pro 8, you have unlimited angles if you take this case off. With this, you only have these two angles here. So you could draw like that. Nobody's going to really draw like this. But what some people would do is they could just do this and hold it, and it's not that bad to hold, and this feels great. And there's no heat in the screen, or maybe not no heat, there's very little heat in the screen. So that is good. Now the other issue with the Surface Pro 8 is now there's only two USB-C ports, whereas the Surface Pro 7 Plus and Surface Pro 7, they had one USB-A, the old USB port, and the USB-C port. But is that an issue? It just depends on how you look at it, because on the Surface laptop, same thing. You have two USB-C ports, and then on the Surface Pro 8, you have two USB-C ports. So now what I do is, for the most part, if you have a dock, I just use this. I just use the dock I already have. It works. Then it connects right away. Still works. Maybe they'll make a Thunderbolt version one day. for more bandwidth, but right now I'm loving the drawing experience on this, how quickly it responds. And then the other thing with Windows 8 now, the keyboard is better. Hallelujah, finally. The keyboard is finally better. So if I wanted to write on something here, the keyboard pops up and it's finally better. One thing of note is Microsoft did purchase the company Nuance that does transcription, and they have a transcription AI engine. So hopefully they build that into their keyboard. So right now, if I press this mic, Surface Laptop Studio. So I don't know if they're using their technology yet, but that helps a little bit if you're not using the keyboard. Again, the touch input is way more responsive. It's not iPad level, but it's good enough. See, if you put your finger near the edge, it automatically grabs it, and it's moving it really smoothly, a lot more smoothly than it used to move it. It's not perfect though, but you could do your multitasking, making that bigger, trying to close this with my finger. That was difficult before, trying to close things with your finger. So now I'm going to try and maximize this. It works. Minimize, and that works. So it's a pretty good experience. Is this a desktop replacement like we all want? I mean, you want to be able to plug one thing. If you're not doing duty machine learning, coding, or video editing, yes, this could replace a desktop. You just plug it in the dock. I have the dock 2 right here, and it works. This is a artist's dream to have one device. So if you're an artist, this one or the Surface Laptop Studio works just as well for art. We're going to do more comprehensive reviews of this device and the Surface Laptop Studio, so stay tuned. But for most people, the base i5 8 gigabytes of RAM model is all you need. If you're going to be using this as one device, I definitely recommend getting 16 gigabytes of RAM, and then get the i7. But then at that point, you're spending the same price that you would pay for a Surface Laptop Studio. Now the Surface Laptop Studio though is heavier, but you could do all the same things with it. So the question is, do you want a little bit bigger screen, heavier device with a keyboard and a graphics card built in? This is a better value at $2,000 than this device would be, because it has no graphics card at that price. So that's something to think about if you're debating between the two. And if you are a Mac user and you're thinking about getting one of these as a work device or as a school device, it does everything you need it to do. Yes, it's not as fast as M1 processor, but M1 can't do this. It's not a full operating system with a touch screen that can be turned into a desktop with a dock, and you could still do art if you're into art. You know, you could do art on this device, whereas you can't do that unless you get two devices or a Cintiq or a screen. But with something like this, you could do this with one device. So that is why someone would get this, because it's one device that can basically cover all your needs. If that's something you need, you would know it when you're looking at a device like this. So we'll be doing more with this device, running more tests, but right now it's a great all-around device, especially for the base model and the price point of the base model. And just make sure, if you know you're going to be doing some intensive work, you may want to get the 16 gigabytes of RAM. But then at that point, Maybe you should get the Surface Laptop Studio, especially if you type a lot or you're a programmer. That built-in keyboard is a lot better. The haptic feedback is a lot better. So stay tuned for more reviews. This is Flo signing out. Talk to you soon.